everyone, and welcome to the wall of the guest bedroom in my house. As you can see, I have created something horrible. So, I am a former fan of the wonderful question mark shonen anime My Hero Academia. I dropped off it around like 2020-ish, I believe. So I have not interacted with this fandom in a very long time, but the fandom has still been going. The show is apparently on its 7th season now, and I have heard rumors that the manga is about to... I have heard rumors that the manga is going to end soon. So I thought it would be fun to discuss the various ships in My Hero Academia. Now, some of you might be wondering, why the fuck would you want to do that, considering the reputation that My Hero Academia shipping scene has? One, because I thought it would be funny. Two, I thought it would be interesting to discuss the various ships and also discuss why I think the My Hero Academia shipping scene is so notorious. But I thought, instead of doing it in a similar vein to my 40-minute Sonic shipping video, I thought it would be fun to do it like this. Though, I don't think this is going to help in regards to the recent accusations that I am just secretly Brian David Gilbert from my friends. But you know what? We are going to unpack that another time. So before we get started, a few things. One, some of you might be wondering, why didn't I put this up on a more professional corkboard? One, because the corkboard that I have has a bunch of shit on it, and I don't want to take all that off and then put it back on. And two, it is way too small to fit all of these images. And another thing, I don't have like a pointer stick, like an actual pointer stick. So we are going to be using my replica of the Spiral Heart Moon Rod from Sailor Moon. We're gonna make this work. We're going to go over all of these ships that I have listed here. We're going to discuss the reasons as to why people ship them, and we are going to explain the My Hero Academia shipping scene. So let's fucking go. So, let's start off with the most popular ships in the fandom, the big three ships, which concern Izuku, aka Deku, and Ochako, Izuku and Bakugo, and Izuku and Todoroki. So let's start with this one, because this one is implied to be hinted at. It's basically the canon main ship. So we got Izuku Midoriya. He is our good, classic, wholesome shonen anime protagonist. He's a huge nerd for heroes. He is born without a quirk, which is the superpower system of this world, and he eventually gets a quirk from All Might. We will discuss All Might later, because he is on this board. And so basically what happens is he joins the hero school, and he is still pretty anxious and shy, and the first person he befriends in UA, which is the hero school, is Ochako. And Ochako is what we would describe as a sunshine character. She's very bright, optimistic, positive, bubbly. She's great. I like her a lot. But basically, these two are kind of just like your good, classic, wholesome ship. Like, there's not a lot of depth. I mean, there is, like, kind of a thing in later seasons, from what I remember, of Ochako being like, oh, I need to be more of a hero on my own and not just follow Izuku, which is, you know, great. We love character development. But in terms of, like a serious development of their relationship and their romance, there's not a lot going on. As far as I know, Ochako knows that she has feelings for Deku, but has not confessed them yet at this point in the series. I don't know if she ever will. I don't think anyone knows if she ever will. But people still really like this ship because it's just, like, good, wholesome fun. People also really prefer it to this mess. So, Bakudeku is the most popular ship in the My Hero Academia fandom. It is also extremely controversial. It's because, for context, these two used to be childhood friends, and then Bakugo had a change in his tone towards Deku, and became Deku's bully. So a lot of people really do not like this ship, largely because for a lot of the series, Bakugo is still just kind of Deku's bully, and it is, not great. I don't like Bakugo. I'm gonna be real with you. I know he has character development, I know he grows and changes as a person. I don't give a shit. I never found him enjoyable. Especially considering one thing that it happens in the first episode that a lot of people use as evidence that this ship would be problematic or abusive is the fact that Bakugo throws, so for context, in what Deku would do is he would write notes about all of the pro heroes and like their weaknesses and stuff like that. So he had a bunch of notebooks, and Bakugo threw one of those notebooks out a window and then told Deku to jump out the window, which, is pretty bad. So yeah, a lot of people don't like this ship, but a lot of people like it in terms of the rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers kind of thing. But I, never was a fan of it. Mainly because I don't like Bakugo. I like a good rivals to lovers ship. I don't like Bakugo. I'm just putting it out there. But I do see why. Like, if you compare it to other, like, shonen anime rival ships, it kind of makes sense that the ship became the most popular because it's like, yeah, this was bound to happen. Yeah, I just don't like it, though. And last up for the big three ships, we got Todoroki. So Todoroki started around season 2. It started getting popularity around season 2, largely because that was around the point where Todoroki became more of an actual character. Because in the main class of the show, which is class 1A, there's like 20 students, and they definitely prioritize some students over the others. In the first season, Todoroki was kind of just one of those background characters that, like, got, like, 3 lines. He didn't really do much in season 1, but then in season 2, during the sports festival, he gets a lot more character development. We learn about his shit with his dad, his horrible, abusive father. Fuck Endeavor. I will say this right now. I don't give a shit that Endeavor got, like, a redemption arc. I always hated Endeavor. But he has a thing with, he has, like, a rivalry thing with Deku, because he figures out that there is a connection between Deku and All Might, because while Deku's quirk is, the fact that he gains a quirk suddenly is kind of touched on, the whole thing is that his quirk being, like, a quirk that is passed down from person to person, and All Might's whole secret, that's something that Deku is also keeping a secret. So no one's really allowed to know that Deku got his quirk from All Might. But Todoroki figures out that there is some kind of connection between All Might and Deku, and because Endeavor basically gave birth... Because Endeavor basically had kids just to create a successor that would be able to replace All Might as the #1 hero, Todoroki views beating Deku as kind of proving himself to his dad, and then, there's a big emotional reconciliation during their fight, and it's beautiful and well animated, and it was hype as shit. But yeah, so because of that, the ship became really popular. They don't get much in terms of, like, development outside of that, because Todoroki kind of just becomes one of Deku's friends afterwards. But Todoroki was an extremely popular character in the fandom, so I think that's part of why the ship continued to be such a popular ship. I think part of the reason why Todoroki specifically became so popular, even though he kind of just, like, falls into the background a lot of the times on accident, unless Endeavor is involved, is largely because of that, like, Zuko popularity, the Zuko charm. I mean, many people have compared Todoroki to Zuko because of the scar, but also, the firepower shit with the dad, all that shit, mom kind of being out of their life. There's a lot of similarities to Zuko. For now, I want to give special mention to Tenya Iida. Tenya Iida is technically the 3rd member of the main trio, of, like, the main protagonist trio of Izuku, Ochako, and Iida. No one gives a shit about Iida, and it makes me really sad because I like Iida. Iida's main ships are with Izuku and Ochako, respectively. Ochako and Iida is the most popular ship for Iida. And Izuku and Iida is the second most popular ship for Iida. So these are his two main ships. Pretty much every other ship involving Iida is a rare pair, and we are not discussing most rare pairs because that would be a fucking nightmare to discuss. But the reason I put Iida up on here was mainly just to give him some appreciation because I do like Iida and I feel really bad that no one pays attention to him. And I think largely part of that problem is because of the fact that the show itself kind of doesn't pay attention to Iida. He gets a bit of character development during the Stain saga, which is nice. And I know that he has a moment to shine during the recent Deku Vigilante shit, which is a whole other mess. But basically, what ends up happening with, Izuku and Iida is I think this ship mainly exists because a lot of people find Izuku's relationship with Iida to be more compelling than any of these three ships that I just mentioned. And I think it makes sense because there is some kind of like admiration going on between these two because they tend to kind of admire each other a lot because there's an episode early on where they're deciding a class rep and they vote for Izuku and Izuku kind of just doesn't know what to do. He kind of just got voted because people thought he was cool and powerful. But Iida's the one with the actual skills, and they voted for each other in that, if I remember correctly. And there's also the Stain Saga, which gave them a lot of bonding. It is really sad, though, that the main trio of the franchise was supposed, like, it clearly should have been Izuku, Ochako, and Iida, but instead Bakugo and Todoroki were the ones that everyone fell in love with in terms of, like, character popularity. Like, everyone loves these two, but no one gives a shit about Ochako or Iida. And I think, actually, part of the reason why this ship is the most popular ship for Iida and a decently popular ship for Ochako is because of a certain trend in fandoms where if you have a character that you ship with someone else, but that character has another really popular ship, in this case, Izuku having a popular ship with Ochako, but people preferring to ship him with Bakugo or Todoroki, a lot of the times in your fanfiction, there's a trend where people will take the character that they don't ship this person with, and then give them basically like a pity ship. I kind of feel like that's what happened with this, because we will discuss this more later. A lot of people hate Ochako specifically because they believe she gets in the way of either Bakudeku or Tododeku, which is just straight up fucking nonsense. I don't know how she does that. I guess because she is canonically Deku's main love interest, but also, like, you guys need to be more confident in your fanon, because, like, you shipping Bakudeku, but this being canon, does not prevent you from writing fanfiction about Bakudeku. So you don't really have a reason to, like, give her, like, a pity ship. I think that's also kind of what happened with, Tsuyuasui and Ochako, because this is, like, the second most popular Fem-slash ship. And I do really like Tsuyu, and I feel like this is also just kind of, like, another fun, wholesome ship. But it kind of makes me sad that I get the feeling that this ship primarily exists to get Ochako out of the way. But I like these three ships. These three ships up here, Iida and Izuku, Iida and Ochako and Tsuyu, these are fine. I think these are cute. There are also three other Bakugo ships on this board that are worth discussing. Todobaku is in a similar vein to Tododeku. Todobaku also happens to spawn during the sports festival because the final battle of the sports festival is Todoroki versus Bakugo. And so, of course, because, you know, it's also kind of like a rivals to lovers thing because Todoroki also kind of has like a smaller rivalry with Bakugo. Because Bakugo also is another case of a character who idolizes All Might, and I think part of that is why these two ended up getting shipped as well.
Hi, it's editing me. Quick addendum. I realized another reason as to why Todobaku could have become popular. I think largely because of the fact that they have such, like, opposing personalities while also kind of having, like, similar quirks in the sense that they're both super powerful quirks, because Todoroki is super, like, chill and stoic while Bakugo is loud as hell. I think that could have been another reason as to why the ship became popular, because opposites attract kind of situation. Because usually people would pair Bakugo off with, like, sunshine characters, but I think a lot of people preferred something different in that sense by pairing him off with someone who's so calm and stoic. Anyway, back to the board.
Then we have Kochako, I think is how you would pronounce this, which is Ochako, Uraraka, and Bakugo. So this spawns again during the sports festival. A lot of ships spawn during the sports festival. So in the case of this ship, this kind of spawned because early on there is a fight between Uraraka and Bakugo. And in the case of this ship, it's interesting because the way that this specific fight is portrayed is they kind of initially have this whole thing where everyone's afraid for Ochako's sake because they're like, oh, Bakugo has this full-ass fucking explosion quirk, and Uraraka's quirk is that she can make things float and get rid of their gravity. So everyone is worried that Ochako is not going to be able to hold her own against Bakugo. She does end up losing, but she does also prove to be able to hold her own, and because of that, Bakugo ends up gaining a lot of respect for her. So that's why this ship ended up spawning. And then also, it spawned a very popular, like, kind of perception of, you know, it's a classic, good, like, wholesome sunshine character, and the grumpy, tired, rage-filled character. So it spawned because of that. And that's a common trope and trend that a lot of people like in fandoms. In a similar vein, Kirabaku. So it's a similar case of a sunshine character and a grumpy character, but also in the case of Kirabaku, Kirishima is kind of the only person who actually likes Bakugo. That's not entirely true because there is the characters who would later form the very popular fan and concept of the Baku Squad. Those who know. But Kirishima is kind of the only one who, I guess, would be like a friend of Bakugo early on until, like, Denki ended up joining the picture. Basically, because these two are seen as really close friends, so obviously they ended up getting shipped. It's pretty common for that to happen in fandom, but this is a popular case of just, like, you know, sunshine and grumpy character, and also a close friends to lovers case. And also because a lot of people who didn't like Bakudeku liked Kirabaku instead, because it gave Bakugo a ship, but also one where he wasn't bullying a person for most of their life. So, you know, that was seen as preferential. So let's move our attention down here. So there is another popular kind of love triangle in this fandom, but it's not as big as this whole mess. And that love triangle consists largely around, it converges largely around Kyoko Jiro. Because there are two popular ships for Jiro, Denki and Jiro, and Momo and Jiro. Both of these cases, where these two are close friends, with Jiro, but they kind of have different vibes, because, Denki is a very goofy, hyperactive, kind of a stupid character. Okay, I say that lovingly, but he canonically is, like, the stupidest person in Class 1A. That's genuinely part of an arc involving him, because during the finals arc, each character is paired off dependent on what their weaknesses are, and he is paired off with Mina, and their final revolves around the fact that they were the ones who got the lowest scores on the midterms. So he's stupid. That's one of his defining traits. And also his quirk makes him more stupid. So he was cursed. I feel so bad for him. But a lot of people like him because, you know, he's a very silly guy. He's very hyperactive and positive and upbeat. But because of that personality mixed with Jiro's more moody personality, these two ended up being really popular. And also because of Denki encouraging her during the festival. I don't remember the full title. That one arc where she sings, that was really good. I like that. So what ends up happening is in early on, I think as far back as season 1, Momo and Jiro are shown to be close friends, and they have kind of more similar personalities compared to these two. So these two ended up being really popular. They spend a lot of time together and are often seen together. So because of that, these two ended up becoming the most popular Fem-slash ship in the fandom. There's not a lot that I can really think of regarding, like, any deeper character exploration, because these two are also often some of the ones who fall into the background. But I do think this ship is cute, because it's very just, like, wholesome and fun. I like this one. And speaking of Fem-slash ships, Togo Chako. Let's fucking talk about Himiko Toga and Ochako Uraraka. I had not been involved in anything My Hero Academia related in a long time, and then suddenly, all over my fucking Tumblr, I see this manga panel. What the fuck is this supposed to mean? So, okay, so in the case of Toga and Ochako, they had more going on in regards to, like, deep character analysis tied to their ship, largely because of the way Himiko Toga is. So, for context, in My Hero Academia, Toga's quirk is that if she drinks someone's blood, she can shapeshift into them. And I can't think of any better word. I'm sorry, I hate this word, but this is legitimately the best word I can use to describe Toga. So Toga's kind of a yandere. She is a very, like, murder-happy character. She also wants to drink the blood of the people who she loves. And she canonically has a crush on Deku, but it's also been implied that she might have feelings for Ochako as well. And because of that, these two have kind of been connected, and they were shipped largely because of Toga's first interactions with Ochako. But then this shit happened in the manga, and it blew up. There is also another big reason as to why this ship in particular is very popular. Enemies to lovers, baby! A lot of people love enemies to lover ships. So, in the case of Ochako and Toga, this was a big deal for the enemies to lovers people. This was also a big deal for the people who really wanted more Fem-slash ships, but there were not a lot of options. We will get to that. We will discuss that in a bit. Speaking of enemies to lovers, Dabi and Hawks. So, I dropped off of My Hero Academia before Hawks kind of became a major character. So I'm mainly going based off of my vague understanding of what happens later in the show. So Hawks is a pro hero who has a lot of ties to Endeavor, who we previously mentioned in regards to being the father of Todoroki and also being a shitty character. I was gonna say shitty father, but you know what, that works too. I hate Endeavor. Fuck Endeavor. But Hawks has a lot of ties to Endeavor. And this isn't really a spoiler because everyone kind of knows this at this point. But Dabi is also the son of Endeavor. He is Toya Todoroki. He is Shoto's brother. And he basically just, like, ran away after he was kind of disowned by his father. And because of that, he has a specific vendetta against Endeavor. Hawks is heavily tied to Endeavor. And they have a lot going on because I'm pretty sure what ends up happening is Hawks tries to infiltrate the League of Villains and then Dabi burns his wings off. And because of that, enemies to lovers. A lot of people felt that there was gonna be, like, I think a lot of people felt because of the fact that they have connections to the same pro hero, but in different ways, with one of them admiring him and the other hating him. There was an interesting parallel there as well, and I think a lot of people really like it when characters kind of parallel each other in a ship. I know I personally like that. So yeah, enemies to lovers, character parallels, character foils, it's good shit. I do like that shit. I don't care about either of these characters that much, but you know what? I can see why people were interested in it, even though, you know, I think it's one of those cases where it would be a specifically fanon thing, because, you know, I don't think Hawks would fall in love with the person who burned his wings off. But maybe, you know, some people are writing this in AUs where that didn't happen. And speaking of Dabi, we have Dabi and Shigaraki. So, this is kind of a case where, the League of Villains are a really popular element of the fandom, especially Dabi and Shigaraki. And in the case of Shigaraki, for the first, bit of My Hero Academia, Shigaraki was the main villain. He's not anymore. We're gonna get to that guy, though. He's relevant to all of this. But basically, because Dabi and Shigaraki are both pretty popular, villains, and also really popular characters in the fandom, and also because they are both examples of something that happens with a lot of the characters in the League of Villains, and also just the villains in general in My Hero Academia, where these are villains who are kind of created because of the failures of the quirk-based society and the hero-based society. These are characters who were failed because of either their quirks or the hero system, and because of that, a lot of people found that they have interesting parallels to the failures of My Hero Academia's society. And also, I mentioned in my Sonic shipping video that if there's one thing fandoms love more than villains, it's gay villains. So Shigaraki and Dabi ended up being really popular in the case, and also because people really like the fact that the League of Villains actually, genuinely seem to care about each other. Himiko and Twice are another example of this, but, you know, their whole thing, their friendship ends up ending in tragedy. But, I think a lot of people really like the fact that the League of Villains aren't just, co-workers or cohorts. They actually genuinely have rapport with each other. So it makes sense that people would ship the characters in the League of Villains. So let's move a bit more towards the left of this board. First up, we have Kirishima and Mina Ashido. So, in this case with these two characters, these are characters who knew each other in middle school before the events of My Hero Academia, which takes place in high school. So these two characters already have connections with each other. They're also commonly seen hanging out together, so they're shown to be on friendly terms. And also there is a sort of mini arc involving Kirishima admiring Mina, because Kirishima's whole thing, or one of the things going on with Kirishima, is that he admires a kind of old, classic hero. Meanwhile, the landscape of, what people expect a hero to be has sort of changed a lot. So he ends up viewing Mina as kind of, the prime hero in the making. So he ends up admiring her. So this ship ended up becoming, decently popular for both of these characters because of their connections with each other. So this ship makes sense to me. I need to get a drink. Oh my god, I'm, getting out of breath. And then, we have, Hitoshi Shinso. So, Hitoshi is kind of in a weird case because he's a character who, once again, gets more attention during the sports festival. And, the thing with Shinso is he gets a lot of attention during the sports festival, but he is not, a main character. He is in Class 1C. And he is, the only person from any of the one of the only people that is from one of the 1A classes that people actually care about. That, and people also like May, and also a few of these characters from Class 1B. But when it comes to, Class 1C, no one gives a shit. So Shinso's whole thing is that he has a quirk that allows him to mind control people. And because of that, he is seen as, a scary, spooky dude. And also because of, his general, off-putting, demeanor, straightforward demeanor. So because of that, a lot of people are initially, very scared of him. He gets into a fight with Deku during the sports festival, and they end up bonding because of that, and Shinso becomes slightly more relevant as the series goes on. But he became a really popular character in the fandom, so Deku and Shinso is a ship. But more popular ship with Shinso is Denki and Shinso, largely because later on in the series, Denki and Shinso form a friendship, and once again, this is a case of a sunshine character and a grumpy loner character. Are we seeing a pattern? Another ship that's, decently popular is Ochiro and Toru Hagakure. If you don't remember who these characters are, I don't blame you. This ship is kind of, one of those ships that I would kind of call, participation trophy worthy ships, because these characters
they are borderline background characters, especially Hagakure, because she literally does not have a character design until, like, the most recent chapters of the story, because her quirk is that she is invisible. So she doesn't have, like, a character design for most of this, but she kind of became, like, shipped with Ojiro because they were commonly seen together, and they seem to be close friends, but, like, these two don't have anything going on, so it just kind of feels like they're just throwing these characters who were, like, decently unpopular a bone, which, you know, I understand, I can respect that, but I figured I'd include it for completionist's sake. Speaking of ships I'm including for completionist's sake, Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku. So this ship, I saw appear a lot on the shipping wiki. I have never seen anyone ship this, but to give it some credit, I do think the ship actually makes some sense, because these are both characters who are known for being highly intelligent, because they're more strategist-based characters, because Momo's quirk is that she can create, like, items from her body and just, like, spawn various items. And Izuku's whole thing is that he plans out his fighting style based on, like, studying everyone else's quirks and their own powers and stuff like that. So pairing up the two strategy-based characters makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I could see this one. This makes a lot of sense to me. Speaking of Momo Yaoyorozu, Momo, which is Todoroki and Momo. So this ship mainly spawned because in the finals arc, each character is paired off with in like a duo, and these two end up getting paired together. And by this point in the series, Momo has kind of like a identity crisis, self-deprecating, lack of faith in herself, because she ends up immediately losing her one-on-one duel in the sports festival, and she's like lost her self-confidence because of that. Because Momo's whole thing is that, similar to Todoroki, because these two didn't take the entrance exams for UA, they just got in because of their families being like super rich and well known. So that was part of why these two were paired together in the finals. But also Todoroki ends up helping Momo regain her self-confidence, and, you know, they become good friends. And they were also kind of seen as similar characters because they kind of tend to be more of the stoic, responsible characters in the group. So yeah, it makes sense to me. So next up, we have Mirio and Tamaki. So these two are members of the big three who are, like, very notable students in UA. And these two are also childhood friends, and it's also another case of a sunshine character and a loner character. And I figured by this point I should bring this up, because the shipping wiki itself points out that a lot of ships in the My Hero Academia fandom fall under the category of sunshine character and loner character, which I think is really interesting because there's like 4 other ships on this board that fall under that category. So I think that's really interesting. They also point out that in a lot of cases, the sunshine character has blonde hair and the loner character has dark hair, which this also fits into. The only one of these that doesn't fit into that is Kiribaku, but Kiribaku also fits into that trope. So I don't know what's up with that, but that's just a really interesting trend that I figured I'd point out. But in the case of Mirio and Tamaki is a very nervous person. He's very self-conscious. He lacks a lot of confidence in, like, his fighting or his quirk. Mirio is kind of like one of those people who just, like, lights up every room he's in. So because of that, you know, opposites attracting. They're childhood friends. Childhood friends are a very popular shipping trope. And also there's the fact that I believe it is canon that Tamaki's hero named Sun Eater comes from Mirio. Mirio was the one who gave him that name. And also because there's the fact that, you know, Tamaki has a lot of admiration for Mirio because, you know, they've known each other for a long time, and Mirio was kind of one of the people who first, like, reached out to Tamaki. So this ship makes a lot of sense to me. So next up, we have ships involving Shota Aizawa, who is the head teacher of Class 1A, who is also known as Eraserhead. Which is a name that has a lot of meaning to me, because Eraserhead is also the name of a David Lynch movie that scarred me. So yeah, that's fun to remember every single time I look at this man.
But basically, there are two main ships involving Eraserhead. Those being Eraser Mike and Eraser Might. Very similar ship names, so I had to put more emphasis on those. But let's first talk about Eraser Mike, because Eraser Mike is the one that is the more popular one. So Eraser Mike is the ship between Eraserhead and Present Mike, whose real name I don't remember. Maybe I'll put text on screen with his real name, but I just call him Present Mike because that's his hero name and what he's usually referred to as. So these two are another case of characters who were friends in school. They were childhood friends, and once again, we have a sunshine character and a dark-haired loner character. What was I just saying? So these two are pretty popular in the My Hero Academia fandom. These are pretty popular characters. Eraserhead is a pretty popular character, and because of the fact that these two characters have known each other for a long time and are often seen playing off of each other, this ship became pretty popular. It also became pretty popular with people who liked, I believe it was called Eraser Dad. In a lot of fandoms, when a character is portrayed as a father figure to another character, people will often tag that with, like, their name, Dad, like, something like that. Like, in the Kirby fandom, if you are making content of Meta Knight being, like, a father figure to Kirby, you would tag it Meta Dad. And also, in a similar vein, a similar thing happened with All Might with, Dad Might. So there was Eraser Dad, and because he was a teacher character, a lot of people viewed him as like a parental figure to the My Hero Academia Class 1A kids. But there was also Eri. So I bring up Eri because a lot of ship content revolving around Eraser Mike involves them being parental figures to Eri. That was a really popular facet of the ship, is viewing them as father figures in like a classic found family, wholesome, nuclear family situation. I mean, Aizawa is already kind of like a father figure to Eri, so everyone was like, let's give her another dad. So that's why a lot of people really latched on to Eraser Mike, especially. There's also Eraser Might, which is All Might and Aizawa, which is not as popular, but it's kind of a similar vein of these characters, you know, both being popular characters in the fandom, both being major heroes, major mentor characters to a lot of the younger students. So it kind of makes sense to me why this one also became popular. I need to catch my breath. Oh my god. And then we have Inko Midoriya, who is Izuku's mom. Yes, that's correct. I didn't misspeak this time. This is Izuku's mom. And then a popular ship was shipping her with All Might. Part of the reason as to why that was a popular ship was largely because of Dad Might. Now, Dad Might specifically was similar to Eraser Dad. It was the case of people viewing All Might as like a father figure, but specifically for Midoriya. With Eraser Dad, it was kind of just like all the Class 1A kids, and you had different dynamics with all of them. Dad Might basically surrounded entirely Izuku. So a lot of people started shipping it because of this, because they viewed All Might as a more worthy father figure to Izuku than his actual father. We know his name. We know the name of Izuku's father. We don't know where the fuck he is. However, speaking of speaking of Midoriya's father, there is another character who a lot of people have shipped his mom with, largely based off of the really popular fan theory surrounding who Izuku's father is. So this is All For One. All For One is the main villain of My Hero Academia. He is the big bad, and a lot of people have theorized that All For One is the actual father of Izuku. I highly doubt that's going to be the case. This video might age horribly by me saying that, but I'm going to leave it in because of that, because I think it's funny. But because of the theory that All For One is secretly Izuku's father, many people have started to ship Inko with him, kind of just on the basis of that alone. But I figured I might as well mention it because I have seen it multiple times. And finally, we have the last, 5 ships to discuss on this board. So I have grouped these 5 ships together because this section of the board is what I have started to refer to as This is the Fem-slash pity zone. So there is a trend in a lot of fandoms, My Hero Academia included, where the Fem-slash ships, which is basically the female ships, are kind of just pushed to the wayside. Now, to be fair with My Hero Academia, part of the problem with that is because everyone is more focused on Bakugo and Todoroki and all of those other characters who are male, and people are more interested in their dynamics. And My Hero Academia itself does kind of push pretty much all of these characters, with the exception of Ochako, to the side. So, outside of Momo and Jiro, Tsuyu and Ochako and Toga, these are the most popular Fem-slash ships. And if you analyze the amount of AO3 fics for these ships compared to like Bakudeku or Totodeku or Kiribaku, it's the difference is astounding. The like ratio between fics is absurd. So pretty much all of these ships are kind of more rare pairs and are more so what I would call like pity ships, which I feel bad for saying because I do think some of these ships are actually pretty cute. I'm out of breath. I do think in the case of Kendo and Momo, that is a ship that actually did have like proper screen time because these are characters who are shown to be close friends despite not being in the same class. So they get like they're slightly more reasonable in the sense that it's like, yeah, these are characters who are canonically friends. But like the relationships between like Ochako and Momo are never discussed. Toru is just a straight up background character. Like none of these dynamics are really that developed compared to like the intense rivalry that Izuku and Bakugo have. So this is just kind of like a case of like the Fem-slash ships being significantly less prominent. And I think that is largely because most of these characters are just inherently less prominent, so they don't have a lot of like... I also think there is a bigger ratio in terms of male characters to female characters, so that kind of makes sense too. But it's just a really funny example of the trend in fandoms for fandoms to heavily prefer the slash ships and also the het ships over the Fem-slash ships. It's just a funny example of that. So now that we've analyzed every single ship on this board, I want to discuss why the My Hero Academia shipping scene is so notorious. Because pretty much, if you ask anyone why they hate the My Hero Academia fandom, they're gonna bring up the shipping scene. This is probably the most notorious shipping scene that I have ever seen in any fandom outside of like Sonic. So why is this the case? Well, I think there are a few reasons. One of them is the fact that the fandom is massive. My Hero Academia was a phenomenon in the anime community for a long time, so it has an extremely big fan base. So it's kind of just a natural like cause and effect where if you have a big fandom, you're gonna have more disagreements because there are more people and more people who are likely to get into arguments. So inherently, a massive fandom is going to cause this kind of discourse. I also think a major problem with this fandom's shipping scene is the fact that there are a lot of characters in My Hero Academia. This isn't even covering, like, Class 1B, or all the pro heroes, or all of the villains, or all the side characters, or all of the spin-off characters. Like, there are so many fucking characters in this franchise. This is just the ones between all the ones that people actually care about. So, I think because of the fact that, like, every single fandom I have been in that has a large cast has more shipping discourse. And I think that's largely because large casts means there are more options. More options means there's more room for people to get into arguments about which ships are better, because there's more possibilities. I also think a major factor in regards to why people hate My Hero Academia's shipping scene specifically is this one right here, Bakudeku. So I kind of touched on this when we were talking about Bakudeku, but A lot of people hate this ship. Even though it is the most popular ship in My Hero Academia, a lot of people hate it. And that is because a lot of people view it as toxic and abusive. And I can understand why, considering the fact that this is a ship between a bully character and the character that he bullied. But I think largely because there's a common trend in fandoms for people who like specific characters or specific ships to kind of be portrayed as like simping fangirls. Like if you have like for example, a lot of people who when they think about like Sans fans, they usually think about like the 12-year-old fangirls. That's kind of like a stereotype of people who like Sans from Undertale. A lot of people who like Bakugo were stereotyped as like people who were like, no, he's so sweet and he's a cinnamon roll. He's not a bad guy. He's just misunderstood. So I think because of that, a lot of people really started to hate the shipping scene solely because of Bakudeku and the kinds of people who would defend Bakugo's actions. Which, to be fair, you can ship Bakudeku and not like Bakugo's actions and like ship them in a context where Bakugo actually grows and changes as a person. But that's not to say that everyone did that. There were a lot of people who kind of like just ignored the fact that Bakugo did a lot of shitty things. So because of that, Bakudeku, I think, is a major factor as to why people do not like the My Hero Academia shipping scene. Another thing that the fandom kind of became known for in terms of its shipping scene is the issues with the female characters that I mentioned previously. It's because I mentioned the fact that in a lot of cases, fans will often try to write the characters who they feel are getting in the way of their ships out of the situation by pairing them off with someone else. I didn't mention the fact that this primarily happens to female characters in cases with male-male ships. Ochako is a massive victim of this. It has become notorious in the fandom that a lot of people hate her as a character, specifically because they think that she is getting in the way of Bakudeku or Tododeku. So I think because of that, and also because like the female characters tend not to get a lot of attention in the shipping scene, a lot of people have started to criticize the issues of how the female characters are handled in terms of shipping and just kind of viewed as like threats to the male ships, which in and of itself, I think it could be used as a case study for the way in which fandoms tend to have preferential treatment of male ships, but that is a whole other thing that I am trying to study, so that we're just gonna not touch on that right now. But I think the biggest reason as to why the My Hero Academia shipping scene is so insane is because the fan base is really young. I got into My Hero Academia when I was in like high school, like early high school, and because of that, I can say for certain that most people who like My Hero Academia are like teenagers. And especially fandom teenagers are very passionate about the things that they like, to a degree where it can become a bit deranged. I say this half lovingly, half derogatory, because I understand what it is like to be deranged about a piece of media. But the thing is, because a lot of these fandom teenagers were really deranged about like Bakudeku or Tododeku, it got to a point where they would just get into arguments with people who didn't agree with their ships. But because they were young, they didn't understand the fact that none of this mattered at the end of the day. Like, I have a story, I've mentioned this on this channel before, but I got yelled at in real life because I said I shipped Ochako and Izuku and not Tododeku. Like, this was a big deal to a lot of people, and I think it's kind of one of those cases where it's like, teenagers tend to have this, like, obsessive, passionate energy about the things that they are interested in, and it can kind of become, like, all-consuming, especially if they're neurodivergent. Because when you are neurodivergent, you have a special interest or hyperfixation, it feels like this is what your life revolves around. That's not actually the case, but that's how it feels to you. So I can understand why this became really passionate, why this became like a huge, passionate, like, community for the shipping. And also just because, like, My Hero Academia, The sad thing about My Hero Academia is that it's a really good concept and a lot of great characters. I love so many of the characters on this board. But man, it really did fall off. And it had flaws from the beginning, but I think a lot of people just didn't see those flaws because they were so just amazed by how great this concept was and how cool all these characters were and how amazing the fight scenes were and the music and everything. And like, yeah. So yeah.